Welcome back. You are listening to the home of forbidden romances. Prepare yourself, because tonight's story will leave you breathless. If you do not remove your hand from my waist within the next 3 seconds, I will break your fingers one by one, right here in front of the entire imperial court. The whisper was low, guttural, and vibrated against Julian's ear like the warning growl of a predator before the strike. Julian Vane did not flinch. Instead, he leaned back into the solid, heat-radiating chest of the man threatening to maim him, tilted his head to expose the pale, vulnerable line of his throat, and offered a smile that was all sugar and glass. "If you break my fingers, Your Majesty," Julian murmured, his voice loud enough for the prying ears of the surrounding nobility, but pitched intimately enough to sound like a lover's tease. "Who will pour your wine later tonight? Besides, you're the one holding me so tightly. People might think you're afraid I'll run away." Kalen Dreist, the Alpha King of the Northern Territories, the Butcher of the Wastes, tightened his grip until Julian's ribs groaned under the pressure. The air between them crackled, heavy with a lethal mix of hatred and a strange, suffocating chemistry. Kalen's golden eyes burned with a promise of violence, but he didn't let go. He couldn't. Not when his mother was watching from the gallery with a hawk's predatory gaze. The madness had begun 3 hours earlier, in the dim, velvet-draped corner of the capital's most exclusive lounge. Julian had been alone. That was his preferred state these days. Once, the Vane family had been the jewels of the aristocracy, but after his father's treason and subsequent execution, the name was mud. Julian, the sole survivor of the purge, had been left with nothing but his looks, his sharp tongue, and a depleted bank account. He had been nursing a glass of cheap red wine, trying to make it look like an expensive vintage, staring at the dregs as if they held the secrets to the universe. "You look like a man contemplating his own funeral." The voice was elegant, aged like fine whiskey, and carried an undeniable weight of authority. Julian didn't look up immediately. He took a slow sip, savoring the bitterness. "Funerals are expensive, madam. I'm merely contemplating how to pay for this drink. I can pay for the drink and the funeral, or I can give you a life where you never have to worry about the cost of either again." Julian finally turned. Standing there, draped in silver fox fur and dripping in diamonds that could buy a small country, was the Queen Mother, Beatrix Dreist. She was terrifying. Julian set his glass down. "Your Grace, unless you're here to arrest me for my father's sins, I suggest you find better company. I am a social pariah." "That is exactly why I need you," Beatrix said, sliding into the booth opposite him. She didn't signal for a waiter. The room seemed to bend around her, creating a private bubble of silence. "My son, Kalen, returns from the border wars tonight. He is difficult. I've heard the stories," Julian deadpanned. "He decapitates generals for incompetence and eats raw meat. A charming bachelor." "He is an Alpha Prime," Beatrix corrected sharply. "His instincts are aggressive, dominant, and currently unmanageable. The council is pushing for him to marry Princess Alara of the Southern Isles to secure a trade route. Alara is a viper. If she enters the palace, she will poison him within a year and hand the kingdom to her brothers. And you want me to warn him. I want you to stop it." Beatrix leaned in, her eyes narrowing. "Kalen refuses to marry. He hates the court. He hates the politics. If I present him with a suitor, he will reject them out of spite. But if he returns to find that he is already engaged to a scandalous, fallen noble who has absolutely no political power and therefore poses no threat to his throne, he will be intrigued, or at least too distracted by his rage to sign the treaty with Alara." Julian laughed, a dry, humorless sound. "You want me to pretend to be the king's fiancé? He will kill me. Literally. He will tear my throat out." "He won't," Beatrix said, sliding a heavy envelope across the table. It was thick with currency. "Because you are a Vane. Your family was known for one thing: the ability to lie so beautifully that even the gods believed it. You are an actor, Julian. Play the part of the lovesick fool. Make him believe, or at least, make the court believe, that you two are inseparable. Buy me 6 months. That is all I need to dismantle Alara's faction. And if he kills me in his sleep, then I will ensure you have a very lavish tombstone." Beatrix stood up. "The carriage is outside. You have 5 minutes to decide if you want to die a beggar or live like a king's consort." Julian looked at the envelope. He looked at his cheap wine. He thought of the cold, drafty apartment awaiting him. 5 minutes is too long, Julian said, grabbing the envelope. I'll need a better suit. Present day. The royal ballroom. The masquerade was a sea of silk and jewels, but the center of gravity was undeniably Kalen. He was massive, his broad shoulders straining against the ceremonial black military uniform, metals gleaming under the chandelier light. He smelled of rain, steel, and pure, unadulterated alpha pheromones, a scent that made the omegas in the room swoon and the betas nervous. Julian, dressed in a white suit that hugged his slender frame like a second skin, felt like a dove caught in the talons of a hawk. You are trembling, Kalen noted, his voice a low rumble against Julian's temple. Are you cold, fiancé? Or are you realizing the magnitude of your mistake? I'm shivering with anticipation, darling. Julian lied smoothly, running a hand up Kalen's rigid bicep. The muscle was hard as rock. It's been so long since we've been this close. Kalen grabbed Julian's wrist, stopping the movement. His golden eyes bored into Julian's sapphire ones. We have never met before tonight. I don't know what game my mother is playing, picking a trader's son off the street and shoving a ring on his finger, but know this, I do not play games. I end them. Then end it, Julian challenged, his voice dropping to a whisper. He stepped closer, eliminating the space between them until their chests brushed. The audacity of the move made Kalen freeze. Tell the court it's a lie. Tell them your mother hired a whore to distract you. Humiliate her. Humiliate me. But look over there. Julian subtly nodded toward the entrance. Princess Alara stood there, flanked by 3 generals, watching them with calculating eyes. That woman, Julian hissed, is holding a marriage contract that will turn your kingdom into a vassal state of the South. Your mother is manipulative, yes, but she is protecting your crown. I am the shield she bought. You can break the shield, your majesty, but then you'll have to take the arrow. Kalen's gaze flicked to Alara, then back to Julian. For the first time, the murderous intent in his eyes dimmed, replaced by a cold, analyzing intellect. He studied Julian's face, the high cheekbones, the defiant set of his jaw, the fear hidden deep behind the bravado. You have a sharp tongue for a shield, Kalen muttered. I'm an expensive purchase, Julian retorted. I come with features. Suddenly, Kalen moved. He didn't push Julian away. Instead, he snaked his arm around Julian's waist, pulling him flush against his body with a force that knocked the breath out of him. The crowd gasped. Very well, Kalen announced, his voice booming through the silent ballroom. If my beloved wishes to dance, who am I to deny him? He swept Julian onto the floor. It wasn't a dance, it was a battle. Kalen led with dominating force, spinning Julian aggressively, testing his balance, testing his resolve. Julian matched him step for step, his body pliable yet resilient, flowing like water around Kalen's stone. You dance well for a traitor, Kalen grunted as he dipped Julian low, his face inches from Julian's. And you lead well for a tyrant. Julian shot back, breathless, his blood singing with the adrenaline. For a split second, suspended in the dip, something shifted. Kalen's gaze dropped to Julian's lips. The hatred was still there, but it was now tangled with something else, something hot and dangerous. The pheromone spiked, thick and intoxicating. Julian felt a flush rise up his neck. Do not think this saves you, Kalen whispered, hoisting Julian back up. Tonight, you sleep in my quarters. If you are a spy, you won't wake up. I look forward to it, Julian replied, his heart hammering against his ribs like a trapped bird. The royal quarters were less a bedroom and more an armory with a bed in it. Weapons lined the walls, swords, halberds, antique firearms. The bed itself was massive, draped in dark furs. Kalen slammed the door shut and locked it. He tore off his ceremonial jacket, throwing it onto a chair, revealing the black undershirt clinging to his sculpted torso. Strip, Kalen commanded. Julian blinked, clutching the lapels of his white suit. Excuse me. I said strip. I need to check for wires. Sigils. Poison vials. Anything you might use to kill me in my sleep. I am not an assassin. Julian protested, though he began to undo his cufflinks, his fingers trembling slightly. I am a distraction. A paid actor. Actors can be assassins. History is full of them. Kalen walked over, grabbing a bottle of dark amber liquor and pouring 2 glasses. He watched Julian undress with clinical detachment that was somehow more insulting than lust. When Julian stood in nothing but his silk trousers, shivering in the cool air, Kalen circled him. He didn't touch him, but his presence was a physical weight. He inspected Julian's arms, his back, the nape of his neck. "You are too thin," Kalen critiqued. "And you have scars." He paused at a jagged white line running down Julian's shoulder blade. "This is from a whip. A disciplinary lash. High nobility style." "My father," Julian said quietly, staring at the wall. "He didn't like it when I spoke out of turn." Kalen stopped. The silence in the room grew heavy. The Alpha King knew the reputation of the Vane family: corrupt, soft, decadent. But the scar was real. It was old, and it was brutal. "My mother chose you," Kalen said, his voice softer, deeper, "because you have nothing left to lose." "Is that it?" "She chose me because I am a liar," Julian corrected, turning to face him. He felt exposed, and he hated it. He grabbed his shirt to cover himself. "And because I need the money." "Honesty," Kalen mused. "How refreshing." He downed his drink in one gulp. "Take the bed. I will sleep on the chaise." Julian's eyes widened. You're letting me sleep?" "I don't trust you," Kalen said, blowing out the candles until the room was lit only by the moonlight filtering through the balcony doors. "But you smell like fear and lavender. It's not unpleasant. Go to sleep, Julian. Tomorrow the Real game begins. Alera won't give up easily." The weeks that followed were a blur of psychological warfare. Julian played the role of the doting fiancé to perfection. At breakfast, he would hand-feed Kalen grapes, ignoring the king's death glare. During council meetings, he would sit at Kalen's right hand, offering insights that were surprisingly astute. "The Southern Isles aren't looking for a trade route," Julian whispered one afternoon as the ambassadors droned on. "Look at their envoys' boots. Red clay dust. That's from the Western mines. They're scouting for iron ore. They want weapons, Kalen." Kalen had looked at him then, really looked at him. Later that day, he rejected the treaty, citing the unauthorized scouting of the mines. The look of shock on the envoy's face confirmed Julian was right. That night, Kalen didn't sleep on the chaise. He sat on the edge of the bed where Julian was reading. "How did you know?" Kalen asked. "I observe," Julian said, closing his book. "When you are invisible to society, you see everything. People don't hide their secrets from the furniture." "You are not furniture," Kalen grumbled. He reached out, his calloused fingers brushing a stray lock of hair from Julian's forehead. The touch was electric. Julian stopped breathing. "What am I then?" Julian whispered. "A problem," Kalen murmured, leaning in. "A very dangerous, beautiful problem." The kiss was inevitable. It started slow, a testing of waters, Kalen's lips rough and demanding against Julian's softness. But when Julian opened his mouth, allowing Kalen in, the dam broke. Kalen groaned, a low, animalistic sound, and pushed Julian back onto the pillows. It wasn't gentle. It was possessive. It was the unleashing of weeks of pent-up aggression and confusion. Kalen kissed him like he wanted to devour him, his hands roaming over Julian's body, claiming every inch. For Julian, it was terrifying and exhilarating. He had spent his life being discarded, being wanted, even with this jagged intensity, was a drug. But the bubble burst the next morning. An explosion rocked the palace wing. Julian woke up on the floor, ears ringing, the room filled with smoke. "Kalen," he screamed, coughing. The king was already up, a sword in his hand, naked and glorious in the chaos. "Get down," Kalen roared, diving over Julian as the balcony doors shattered inward. 3 assassins, dressed in the colors of the Southern Isles, dropped into the room. Kalen was a whirlwind of violence. He moved with a speed that defied physics, his blades singing through the air. He cut down the first 2 before they could even draw their weapons. But the third one, a massive brute, launched a throwing knife not at Kalen, but at Julian. Julian froze. He saw the glint of steel. He saw his death coming. Then, a shadow eclipsed him. Kalen stepped in front of Julian, taking the knife deep into his left shoulder. He didn't even grunt. With a snarl of pure rage, he lunged forward and impaled the assassin against the wall. Silence fell, broken only by Kalen's heavy breathing and the crackle of fire from the curtains. Julian scrambled up, his hands shaking as he reached for Kalen. You're bleeding. Why did you? You idiot. Kalen slumped against the wall, sliding down, his golden eyes hazy. The knife was poisoned. Black veins were already spreading from the wound. Contract. Kalen wheezed, a bloody grin tugging at his lips. Can't. Let the shield break. Damn the contract. Julian ripped the sheet from the bed, tearing strips to bind the wound. Tears he didn't know he was crying fell onto Kalen's chest. Beatrix. Help. Someone help. 3 days. Kalen lay in a coma for 3 days. The poison was a rare neurotoxin from the southern jungles. The physician said only an alpha's constitution could survive it, and even then, it was a toss-up. Julian did not leave the room. He did not eat. He did not sleep. He sat by the bed, holding Kalen's cold hand, whispering stories to him. He told him about his childhood, about the lies, about how lonely it was to be a Vane. He told him the truth. I didn't do it for the money, Julian whispered on the third night, resting his forehead against Kalen's hand. I mean, I did. But when I saw you that first night, looking at everyone like you wanted to burn the world down, I understood you. I wanted to burn it down too. Then we shall burn it together. The voice was rough, like gravel grinding on glass. Julian's head snapped up. Kalen's eyes were open. They were tired, but the gold was clear. You heard that? Julian gasped. I heard everything, Kalen rasped. He squeezed Julian's hand, weak but steady. Especially the part about my mother's diamonds being tacky. Julian let out a wet laugh, burying his face in the mattress. They are tacky, Julian. Kalen tugged on his hand. Julian looked up. The contract, Kalen said. Where is it? In your desk. I can get it. Burn it. Julian froze. What? Burn it, Kalen repeated. I do not want a fake fiancé anymore. A cold stone dropped in Julian's stomach. Of course. Now that the assassination attempt was public, the political landscape had changed. Kalen didn't need the charade. He could go to war openly now. I understand, Julian said, pulling his hand away. I'll pack my things. You really are an idiot for a genius, Kalen groaned, trying to sit up and failing. I don't want a fake fiancé because I want a real one. Julian stopped dead. He turned back slowly. Kalen looked at him with an intensity that stripped Julian bare. You saved me from the politics. You saved me from the poison. The physicians told me you sucked the venom out of the wound before they arrived. You risked your life for a man who threatened to break your fingers. I have a high pain tolerance, Julian mumbled, his face burning. Marry me, Kalen said. It wasn't a question. It was a command, a plea, and a vow all at once. Not for the kingdom. Not for my mother. For me. Be my queen. Be my equal. Be the only person in this godforsaken castle who tells me the truth. Julian looked at the king, the alpha who had taken a knife for a pariah. He walked back to the bed, leaned down, and kissed Kalen's forehead, then his nose, and finally his lips. I'm expensive, Kalen, Julian whispered against his mouth. I own the treasury, Kalen replied, closing his eyes in contentment. Bill me. The wedding of King Kalen and Julian Vane was the scandal of the decade. The Queen Mother Beatrix cried into her handkerchief. Tears of joy, she claimed, though Julian suspected she was just relieved her scheme had worked better than intended. Princess Alara fled back to the south, her spies exposed and her plans in ruins. On the balcony of the royal suite, overlooking the cheering crowds, Kalen wrapped his arms around Julian's waist from behind, resting his chin on Julian's shoulder. They are cheering for you, Kalen murmured. They are cheering for the free wine, Julian corrected, swirling his glass. But I'll take it. Kalen bit Julian's earlobe lightly. I never did break your fingers. Julian smirked, leaning back into his husband's embrace. Finally safe, finally home. There's still time tonight, Your Majesty. But remember, if you break them, you'll have to pour your own wine. And that is how the viper tamed the wolf. If you enjoyed seeing Julian take control of the Alpha King, destroy that like button. And tell me in the comments, would you forgive a husband who tried to kill you? I'll be reading your answers. Subscribe for the next chapter. Until then, prompt image. Prompt, masterpiece, best quality, high-res, 1.2. Korean manhwa style, semi-realistic, digital art. 2 men, BL, Yaoi, Man 1. Kalen, Tall, muscular alpha, short, messy black hair, golden eyes, wearing unbuttoned black military shirt, bandages on shoulder, looking down with intense possessive gaze. Man 2. Julian, slender, elegant, noble, silver blonde hair, blue eyes, wearing loose white silk shirt falling off shoulder, looking up with flushed cheeks and defiant expression, intimate bedroom. Setting, moonlight streaming through balcony doors, scattered papers and wine glass on floor, atmospheric lighting, soft shadows, emotional tension, cinematic composition, sharp focus.